Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Uh-huh. So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Your favorite podcast, it's Critical Blast.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 9th and 10th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish. They're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
And I'm Scott Wakefield, host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham, where we talk about comic books and all kinds of great storytelling, sometimes with incredible guests. And we want you to join us Wednesday nights from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll see you there.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hello, Internet, and welcome to That Silverline Show on Tuesday. I am your host, Tim TK, and I'm joined, as always, by David Rios.
How you doing, everyone?
Yeah, and unfortunately, Jose is not here at the moment. Hopefully, he is doing well, but if he comes in later, we can hear from him then. If not, we'll check back in next week. However, for tonight, we are talking about comedy and tragedy. For those of you who went into a sort of English literature classes in college or wherever, you know that that is one unit talking about how comedy and tragedy are both kind of flip sides of the same coin, that either story is just a difference of setting tone. So we're going to be talking about setting tone in comics. And how you do that, how you can change a story by messing with certain elements in the art or the storytelling. And so I'll probably be talking more of the writing side, David's talking on the art side, and crisscrossing and flipping and talking wherever, because we usually end up talking about different things.
Pretty much.
Yes. Yeah. So first I'll open it up. Also, I missed last week. I'm back this week, and I'll probably be back for a while, I think. I was at an award ceremony where won a couple awards. So, yeah.
The award-winning Tim TK. There you go.
Yeah. But, yeah. Hopefully not missing any more shows anytime soon. Although I don't know, Starfield's coming up, and that may sucked me away from life. Yeah, so I guess I'll open up the floor to you, David.
Actually, do you want to start before we get into it? Do you want to start talking about Kickstarter?
Oh, that's right. We do have a Kickstarter, yeah. Kind of haven't been in the news loop for a second there with everything going on, but yeah.
I'm a little vested in this. I'm working on 2 covers for Kalis, so.
There it is.
But yeah, definitely want to check our status where we're at.
Yeah. Okay, pull this up in a new tab, and I am logged out, so it doesn't show my info. Doot. All right, currently we are running a new Kickstarter. This is another double feature, Cat and Mouse issues 1 through 4. So that is the full collection of Volume 1 of the Cat and Mouse relaunch, as well as Kalis 1 and 2, and this is the sequel series, I believe.
Yes.
So
it's landed.
Yes. So if you have, if you're a fan of the first volume of Kalis, like I was, then be sure to check this out because I think this is the first full second volume that we're doing as Silverline since we have relaunched. So this is going to be some exciting stuff. And as David said, he has some covers here that he's invested in. So hopefully you come and check those out. Do they come up here? Okay, well, they will be featured in the trailer here. So let me go and get that going while we're here.
Hi, and welcome to our Kickstarter. I'm here to tell you about our Kickstarter. And that's the story of a guy stolen from ex-fiance. Hey, why don't you go get my kid sister far away from home? Well, it's his ex-fiance, so he doesn't really want to do it. But he's letting the police officer, so he decides that he will go to New Orleans and see if he can find him. When he goes there, only to discover the kid's sister has been caught up in a human trafficking ring. So he has to figure out how to get her out of the human trafficking ring and get her home. And yes, our ninjas fall.
Hi, everybody. Brent Larson here. I wanted to just tell you a little about my Silverline Comics series, Kalis, Achilles Has Landed, which is actually a follow-up to the Kalis series that's already come out. It's the story about a couple of astronauts who've been missing but are now back and have super strength and a little invulnerability, which means they just do whatever anyone would do, which is go to Libya and attack a terrorist training facility, obviously. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks.
You like making comics? Tell all of your friends. Thank you, and remember to make mine Silverline.
All right. But yeah, we're at 53% of our current goal. We're at 1,855 out of 3,500. 54 backers already, so thank you those of you who are already on it. We have 11 days to go, so that is just about the back half of the month almost. So please go ahead and back this project. We do have a couple different tiers for you. The basic tier is $5. We'll get you a digital copy of a comic. So if you're just looking to grab a standard floppy at standard floppy price, that's your tier for you. However, you see, we're already starting to see. I like this change they made where they show you how many backers are at each tier. I think it's kind of neat to see what's more popular.
Nice.
But we are getting picks for some of these variant covers as well. And let's see here. Yeah, most popular ones are going to be the tiers that get you both comics in physical. That's the tier that if I'm back in, I usually do so. And if you are looking to get caught up on the series so far, we do have tiers which include everything so far. That way you are fully up to date. Don't have to go back through the back issues. Although if you do want to add some back issues to your order, also thank you to the 7U who have backed at the highest tier, which gets you a little bit of everything, plus some limited edition collectibles. I guess in here. And yes, I should mention Kalis does have some limited edition foil covers. So if you're a fan of collecting limited edition covers, Hand Mouse also as well, but I mean, look at the Chaos one. It's black and white. You gotta love that.
Yeah. So I am doing covers B and C. Cover B was drawn by Rob Davis and inked by Thomas Flormonte.
Mm-hmm.
And the C cover was penciled and inked by Jackson. He is, he has all that complete. I have those in my hand. I have actually finished coloring the B cover. I'm still working on the C cover.
Okay.
In our on the Sunday show, I dropped in and was participating with the trivia night, helping Roland out and Tommy, and they did show the work. So if you want, I can
absolutely
show the before and the after cover. Let me bring it up here.
And before I drop this page, though, I'll say, like I was saying earlier, if you did miss any of our runs in the past or any of our previous series, if you, for instance, missed Wolf Hunter issue number 1 and want to get caught up before issue number 2 comes out, then you can add that back issue onto your order. Okay, but let's take a look at these covers.
Hopefully it's coming up.
Oh, there it is.
Wow.
Oh, we got Inception.
You want me to stop and try again?
Yeah. There we go.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, this is the Rob Davis and Tommy picture cover, and here is the colored piece.
Ooh.
From my understanding, this is the one that will be turned into the foil.
Yeah. I mentioned the in foil that muzzle flash is going to look real cool.
Oh, and I also put the comment on a separate layer, so hoping that they can go in. Maybe they will be able to put it, on top of the tire,
right?
Or something like that. It's something that Roland likes to play around with, so I gave him the prep for that. And then let me get a clear picture of. Sorry, just give me 1 second here. So this is a black and white. I'm not going to show the color yet, just because until I get rolling. I got a couple of ideas, that I'm laying out. So I want to get their thing before I show it. But this is a better picture than the small little version. So we've got one of the two astronauts. I believe his name is Scott. I haven't seen the copy that I had as a reference material didn't have all the text, the name, text and all that stuff on there. So I believe this gentleman's name is Scott.
Okay, yeah.
And this is just one of the bad guys that's there that he's taken out, shooting and then taking this guy out kind of in a sweeping motion.
Right.
So yeah, I'm having fun with it. So I'm looking forward to the finished piece. Like I said, I'm doing a couple of different versions. There's some similarity between the two covers.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to the way you want to do it. It looks very similar to the other one. So I'm playing around with a couple of options there. So looking forward to it. And then once I get the approval, I'll let Roland do the unveil of it, and we'll go from there.
Okay, very cool.
All right, let's stop this. Okay.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Those both look super dope. So make sure you go ahead and back our Kickstarter, and if you do so, back at the tier that gets you one of those covers. I'll probably be doing the full cover myself because I like fancy covers.
Yeah.
Okay. But yes, tonight we're talking about setting tone, and being that my backing is my history is in my English lit curriculum, I thought immediately goes to the comedy and tragedy block that usually gets taught in higher level English lit or theater classes. So before I get into full MBA mode, I'll put the floor up. As a color statement, color is obviously one of the more tone charged elements of the illustration. So what kind of thoughts, just broad strokes, what sort of thoughts do you have when it comes to setting the tone of a comic?
It's from the color point standpoint. It all depends on what the tone of the pencils are and all that. For example, on this cover that I did for the cover B, Rob Davis pencil, that was and the tone of the book were very at night. So I tried to do a lot of the tone of a lot of blues incorporated. I also tried to do a different style, and I talked about some of the influence, and I'm always kind of learning things as I go and see. So one of the things that I did with this is I traditionally do like a middle color, a mid color, mid-tone, and then I tend to go to shadows and then go to highlights. And for this one, I started with the darkest color and then went to a highlight color to give kind of that contrast, which I think worked pretty well in the dark because it had a lot of those out in the middle of the night tones on there. So I played around with that, and depending on how the art is done, we've seen before on some of the other book styles where you've got your horror type books, and those ones you have a lot more dramatic light and not a lot of rendering, because you want to give more of a mood lighting type. Yeah. But even a little more. An example may be, you may have a dark room light and then a very strong yellow coming in, and kind of an overpowering yellow. So you're not seeing a lot of the details. And if you're dealing with a lot of like dark inks and stuff like that, and a lot of minimal white areas, then those yellows tend to pop and kind of fade out some of the other details in the background. Like you may see a cave type, as an example, like a cave type setting, It may have a glow from a torch, something in the background. But then you may have up in the top corner, you may have some bats or something like that, where you're throwing in like a dark red or something like that to kind of, pinpoint those pieces, but kind of have them kind of fade into the back. So a lot of it depends on, rendering, sample style, stuff like that. And then you've got other type of styles like some of the Frank Miller stuff, and some of the Death Blow books that were the black and white. So you're heavy on black, white, grays, stuff like that, for a separate tone. And you've got things like the Dark Knight Returns. They had a lot of grays mixed in there, and almost a lot of like pseudo watercolor type, washed out mixed with grays and stuff like that, versus something that's use that as an example. I'm not familiar. I don't know if you're familiar with this. Something like the I Hate Fairyland, where things are very very bright pastel-y colors and things, because it sends that tone, like sharp colors and things like that. So a lot of it will depend on, what's the basis of the artwork that will determine the color. So you have the pencilers coming in and doing that, and of course that leads back to you, Tim. As the writer will set the tone for that, and the pencil will follow suit, then the inker, and then the colorist, and all that. So let me turn that over to you.
Yeah.
You discuss your portion of it.
Yeah. My general thoughts on creating tone. I'd say when it comes to the finer points of setting tone and genre, that is when having a more classically trained experience in writing really comes in, or it comes in handy, or having spent a lot of time just ingesting media in general. Before I've said I'm not a proponent of the idea that you need to go to school to become a writer. You just need to put pen to paper. But classical training helps you bypass some of those hours of reading media and breaking it down. Because tone is one of the first points you notice a sharp split between genres, which is why the section that's usually taught in is comedy and tragedy, because for the most part, comedy and tragedy follow the same arc, have the same tropes, and will oftentimes have the same punchline, but the delivery makes it a complete 180 from each other. Hey, Tommy. And knowing how to change your core elements at the beginning can be really helpful as it's good to be back. Can be really helpful. So, for instance, pacing is going to be a big part of your delivery. So from the get-go, when you're just coming up with the idea of your story and how you want to even block it out, you need to think about your pacing, because if you're doing something that is more dramatic, either in a way that is looking to terrify, enthrall, or captivate, which I've entered in NBA mode. But terrify, obviously, the connection with horror there. But if you're enthralling someone, you might be building up for something like a heroic drama. Think something like Man of Steel, almost the idea of it's a drama with a heroic twist at the end. Or Captivate is something leading into a tragedy where you're pulling the audience into something that is currently spiraling. You're trying to hold your audience captive. So you want to build something with a slower tone because you want to give your audience time to get pulled into the storytelling. Whereas if you're building something that's lighter and bubblier, you don't want your audience to have time to catch their breath. You're constantly rolling out punchline after punchline, trying to keep them on the tips of their toes at all times. I forgot who it was that someone said, like, as a comedy artist, as a comedy writer, the way you get your audience to like laugh at every joke is to try to slip jokes past them. You want to constantly be throwing things at them so they don't have time to breathe necessarily. So either way, you're building it in polar opposites to just the way human psychology works. That's how you're going to draw their attention in the most for that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go to from that point to once you're actually writing out the script and you're looking at your scene descriptions, and this is where you are having that conversation with your art team of, all right, I need the artist and the color and the inker to be on this page with me to understand that this is what we're going for. So you're going to be describing scenes that are darker, and you might even use adjectives in there, which the audience isn't going to necessarily, read the adjective, but you want your team members to see the adjective as well, so that they can grasp the emotional context of the image you have in your head. It's like if you say that something is, towering above them or looming or impending, using words like that certainly builds a different image than if you say, something is tall. It's a different visual image.
Something is tall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and you can also, write in your notes about lighting. Lighting is incredibly important because, like David said, you using those like strong lighting effects to add emotional context to the scene, because your reader isn't going to be able to. My descriptions here are probably going to get more weird and gross as the show goes on, because I mostly write horror. Writing Wolf Hunter was a weird disjuncture for me, but I traditionally am a horror writer, so my brain thinks in terms of gore. So your audience can't smell a rotting body. Your audience can't, taste copper in their mouth. But if you throw in a mossy, diluted green light on a scene, they can get the feel of rot or something like festering in the air. If you have like a red flash or a yellow flash, they can get the idea of something just shocking just happened, or like the feeling of getting hit over the back of the head, or walking into something that you're not supposed to see. Things like that. Contrast that to the other thing where, if you're writing something like, Wolfram, for example, had a very specific tone. It was drama, but it's a lighter drama because it's a heroic spy genre. So the notes were a lot of, we did use color flash, but it was mostly pastels and kind of faded lighting like you see in a lot of Euro comics, because we want the feeling there to be more unified and give it a sense of reality, but with room for emotional interpretation. The idea that emotions what the characters are feeling might disjoint what reality is actually present for them. So using a lot of natural colors, but with slightly off tones to them, or things like that, as well as making it overall more calming, because everyone is trying to be more calm and collected. It's the spy game is a thinking man's game, so everything is, a lot of soft blues and tans and things like that. And then when something happens and you get that flash of red, you know that something has changed dramatically in that moment. And those are all notes I could put into essentially the communication with my art team there. And then going on to the dialogue, the last bit of sort of the writer's pie in setting tone. Dialogue plays a huge part in tone, both in delivery as well as context. Because the idea of, if you're building a slower story to pull the reader into something that's more dramatic, your dialogue might be more spaced out, and you're probably not going to deliver as much detail as you would in something else. You're not going to have the classic Iron Man monologue. And you're for sure not going to have as many jokes. You're going to have, well-placed timing, because that's, a good joke can do a lot to diffuse tension that immediately racks back up. If, someone cracks a joke and then gets the head chopped off, that's something that happens a lot in horror movies for a reason. There's
Oh yeah.
yeah. There's a goal in Slaughterhouse film, which is you want to make the audience laugh and then scream. You want it to be the same breath. So we're opposed to something like a lighter tone with comedy, with as well as your more heroic action pieces. You're going to do a lot more exposition dumping because you're wanting to set groundwork for the audience to pull on later. You're going to have a lot more jokes to pull the audience along, because the laughter, as opposed to the shock and gasp, the laughter is the through line to the excitement. So you're bouncing between laughter and excitement to pull an audience through, and that's, you're building that to be a little quicker, because those things don't, in a weird sense, writing comedy is a lot harder than writing tragedy, because it's a lot harder to make someone chuckle out on every page, and that's kind of the goal. With writing action, you want someone to be excited on every page, and that's a little harder than getting 3 pages of burn to then shock someone on page 4. However, in both cases, you need to know what you're writing, you need to know how to pay it off. If you're trying to write a comedy like a tragedy, you're going to get someone bored. If you try to write a tragedy like a comedy, you're going to make your audience emotionally uninterested in your story, because they just get burnt out so quick. So that's so that's kind of the writer's pie in it, and why I think that, if nothing else, reading a book on you're fine. If you look up comedy and tragedy, you'll find tons of books on that exact premise of flipping elements to match tone. So doing something like that, I feel like would be really beneficial for any writer.
Mm-hmm. Also remember that, a lot of the stuff that you're putting in, when we've talked about, the penciler, the inker, the colorist, but also don't forget the impact that the letterer has.
Oh, absolutely.
Another example was some of the tone in like the Dark Knight Returns.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the text, there was a lot of reporting going on in there, so there was a lot of text bubbles
mm-hmm.
and things like that to show the newscast, which that was part of the tone of the part of the tone of the story was the newscasters reporting on what's going on and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have things like for example on the Demon's Tale stuff, when we have Isaac turn into a demon character in the end of the second and the third book and all that, you have changes in the text for his speech and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So you don't have your typical text writing and all that lettering that you have throughout all the other characters, but a lot of his stuff is a lot more like demonic. So you've got a lot of splotchy text. It's more visually vibrant, in your face. Yeah. And then I went through and colored it like a deep dark red, kind of blood red and all that stuff. So when you're dealing with that, you've got the aspect of not only the visuals on that from the artwork, but even things like text. Text comes into play, and this is actually a book that I was reminded of. It's not horror based or anything, but there was the old Marvel Comics G.I. Joe, and I believe it was issue 21 of G.I. Joe was Snake Eye's origin. And if you pick up that book and you read that book, there is no wording at all.
Yeah.
The entire book is all visual panels to tell the story. So that in itself was, another example of, how you can set a tone, and there's, things like just this example of Storm Shadow throws his sword trying to kill Scarlet, and all of a sudden you just see this gasping look on her face, the sword coming at her, and then all of a sudden you see Snake Eyes pop up over behind her, reach over and, grab the sword and throw it over the top of his head. That to me is, that was great storytelling, in taking the view of Snake Eyes, who you can't speak and all this. So, there's tons of ways to play around with the mood, the mood settings through all different types. And you touched on it before, the coloring and all this stuff, the rotting corpse, for example, you mentioned some greens. You want to go through and do grays with some kind of pastel-y blues or greens, like that point, to kind of give you the idea of dead skin.
Yeah.
And you've got some of the other ones, like, some of the Spawn books that use a lot of heavy greens. Mage uses a lot of greens for the magic and all that stuff to tell, stuff like that. So there's a lot of things that you can go through and pick and choose to set your themes.
Absolutely.
And like I said, it always starts with, the writer and what he envisions for that issue. So some good stuff there.
Yeah, and a lot of things that kind of come to mind with that is, in terms of just the impact a litter can have. My thought immediately went to, it's more common now than it was in the past, but now with like issues of Spawn or Venom, where the text bubbles are almost as goopy as their suits now, where it's really kind of built on, where you'll be able to see the mood of Spawn in the text bubble, where it'll go from being got goopy and rolly when he's more calm to being sharp and jagged when he gets aggravated. Or there was, I can't remember the exact issue name now, but it was one of the all no text issues of X-Men that they did as an annual. But I can't remember, it might have been Silent Night or something like that. Banshee had been taken captive, and I believe, what's his name? The guy who built the Sentinels.
Trask?
Trask, yeah.
Oliver Trask?
Oliver Trask, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And you had, essentially, you saw Banshee being taken up through Trask Industries, watching, essentially, other X-Men also being held or doing other things until he's taken in front of Trask, and then at the very last panel, spoilers for something that's 20 years old, Banshee screams and sends Trask flying out the window, and that's the only text you have in the book at all, is just that last scream.
Well, that's a good example too, and you see it in other media, And speaking about long-term medias, examples of it. Same thing. How many? Is it 30 years ago now? Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh yeah.
The issue Hush, where the whole storyline was about, these silent, killers,
Mhm.
and the very end, again, 30-year-old spoiler, but at the very end, they were stealing the voices, and Buffy manages to get her voice back and screams, and that's enough that it blows their heads off and all this stuff and kills them because they're vulnerable to that. So the tone of the thing was, that these things lived off of silence, and the sound can kill them, and at the end, that is actually what killed them.
Yeah.
And the spin-offs on that too, and playing in aspects like the movies. I'm blanking on the name. The ones with Emily Blunt, where they have to be silent.
Oh yeah, A Quiet Place.
Yeah, Quiet Place movies. Those ones as well. There's a lot of theme about how do they work for it. Work through that part. And then you also have things like some of the movies with the heroes, and how you have your Superman movies that have your bright colors, and you always want Superman to be super bright. It's big blue suit with a big red ass and all this stuff. And then you've got James Gunn's take on it. It's Brightwood?
Yeah.
That they kind of took the idea. Well, let's flip that around and make the alien that comes evil, and you started to see a lot of the darker tones and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we see a lot of that stuff in alternate media, and it's good to see that stuff come into comics, and that expands the way that a lot of them are going. So
yeah,
it's good stuff.
Yeah, kind of play on that is that the idea of taking time to build tension and captivate your audience. And one of the things you can do that is with pure silence, and that's why in some movies when the character is walking up on where they're being like hunted by the monster where it'll just be a really slow walking thing where all you hear is them and maybe the creaking of floorboards. The music is cut out, and you might just hear their breathing, but other than that, it's pure silence. And in comics, you can get a similar effect by more or less cutting the dialogue at that point. But then it really comes down to the art team. That's where our team can really shine in having, and as a writer, you should also really work on your pacing on, can you tell stories can you tell a full story in 5 panels without dialogue? Can you make something so clearly described that everyone knows the change that just happened over 5 panels without you telling them, essentially. And their team then gets to take that moment to really show their chops on making that 5 panels visually captivating as well. So that way, as you're the reader, you're just pulling that all in until you flip the page and something jumps out at you.
Yeah, a perfect example of that is you cut the dialogue, and then it's like, okay, now you kind of picture you're cutting in, and the person that you have a feeling is going to be dying is now zooming in on their face, and they're getting closer, and they're zooming in on their eyes, and their eyes are looking this way, and their eyes are looking that way, just with fear and panic in their eyes, that whole sense of tone, and then flip the page, and then all of a sudden, blah,
exactly.
Here comes the thing. So, some great stuff across the board. Planning on all the team parts.
Yeah,
fantastic. Fantastic things can be done with that.
Yes. Now, kind of flip to the opposite of that, because I don't want to spend the entire time in my wheelhouse. Although I will say that the current project I'm working on is closer to form, so hopefully I and I already have the outline and beat sheet done and in the hands of everyone. So hopefully I'll have script 1 in the hand of the illustrator soon, and we can start making some announcements. But yeah, I think that will be. It's something that I'm very excited and passionate about, so hopefully that comes through. But on the flip side, talk about something that's more bright and bubbly, the comedy to the tragedy, and this isn't necessarily, we're talking about tragedy, we're spending a lot of time talking about horror, because horror, in most cases, despite the, the last girl making it out the end, is usually a tragic story of some point, where the group of teenagers or the heroes at the beginning have made some choice which has led to their own downfall at the end in classic tragic styling. Whereas in comedy, usually the heroes make some tragic decision, but they end up bringing it back in the end through some hijinks. And this is also something that works out like in your triple heroic sense or anything like that, where you can still have darker heroics, but we'll deal with that later. That's something like Invincible, where there's a whole stuff there. But in a more traditional sense, something along the lines of, in comics, you've already seen something like this, where the issue starts, Wolverine picks a fight with somebody he's not supposed to, ends up getting bailed out by Nightcrawler or Colossus. They rag on each other, and then at the end they team up and settle their thing with the guy that he wasn't supposed to fight in the first place. But in comedy, you're going to be building things, like I said, to in the opposite way. Whereas you're not trying to pull someone in, you're trying to keep them rolling along the entire time with you. And so, that's where you end up getting the idea of you want to have a laugh a minute, or you want to keep the audience on the edge of your seat, is that you're always having something that's exciting or something that's funny. And that's why comedy can also be really hard to write, because you're trying to be funny all the time. And, sometimes they're not always funny. So you need to have other writers come in and punch you up.
Well, you also have to remember that sometimes you get funny mixed with dark.
Yes.
It's another aspect of it.
Yeah.
And, a couple of examples, I'll use these both DC, is Lobo and the Creeper.
Yeah.
So you have some dark stuff, but you have some comedy there. Yeah. I mean,
I think,
look at like very dark, very comedic. Look at Lobo's paramilitary Christmas.
Yeah.
Where the Easter Bunny hires Lobo to take out Santa Claus because he's stealing all of the holiday business. So you've got that too. So you got the rolling stuff like that mixed with the others, but overall in tone, you're dealing with a comedy there.
Yeah.
So
kind of like another example of that is looking at in modern movies, Renfield, where it's a dark comedy, but it's very much in the idea that the moments where they would build into your traditional idea of suspense or tension, they flip it on its head to make it more comedic. The idea of instead of everyone like opening the coffin and praying over, almost immediately Dracula pops out and starts screaming at people, or starts walking into the back of the room after the coffin that was already entered. Having the classic, I don't know if anyone caught this, but they did a reference to the old Dracula movie where I forgot the name of the actor, but they had just the shadows over his face, just a little bit of light over his eyes as he's staring at, I believe it was Mina. But they had a similar moment where Nicolas Cage and Renfield doing that, but then it's cut short by Nick Schwartz just popping in his ear to say something.
Are you talking about the old Frank Langella stuff, or the Christopher Lee stuff?
I think it was Franklin.
Langella.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's probably one of those two.
Because it wasn't Christopher Lee. It was. Oh no, it wasn't even that. Let me see here. There's the 1931 with Bela Lugosi.
Okay, the Bela Lugosi.
Yeah, there's that. He has that scene where he's staring out, and there's just the shadows covering his face except for his eyes. Okay. But they did a reference to that in Renfield. Only they cut it short with a joke thrown in there. But idea of like you could easily turn Renfield into more of a horror, more of a tragedy if you paid things off differently. Because the story of I mean, that's originally what it was. The story of Renfield, not necessarily the story of Dracula, but the story of Renfield was a guy who went to Transylvania, made a deal with the Count for power, ended up abandoning his family, came back to England, went insane in an asylum until Dracula eventually killed him. However, in this story, it's the Renfield is a guy who goes there, and instead of going insane, it gets turned into something of a lowly manservant who only eats spiders and has to find Dracula, buses full of cheerleaders and virgins to feed on nightly.
That just screams similar to another comedy, another famous horror type comedy, Young Frankenstein.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Amazing thing. I mean, you've got the tones and all that stuff, but you've got some really great comedy moved in, put in, and it is a comedy, Yeah,
it's what's the whole thing of they
Abby something, Abby
yes.
Normal.
Happy normal, but the whole thing where they change it, but they do the things where they change the pacing, they change the delivery, so it comes through in a way that makes you laugh as opposed to making you grow stressful. Whatever the idea of the moment where they come to the laboratory and the instructions are to walk this way, and they follow them like, no, walk this way. You have to do the weird shuffle.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The idea of you punch up the pacing a little bit and you make things flow a little quicker because, again, if you can sneak a joke by the audience, that means that they're catching all of your jokes. Or if you're building something that is more of on the rogue sense, if you're trying to build something that is more exhilarating as opposed to stressful, you're going to be throwing in a lot of hype moments for this. You think oddly enough of something like Dragon Ball Z, even the classic Gundam is still more of a tragedy, but something like when you get to like Gundam Seed, but the idea of you're building in moments where you're constantly seeing the hero achieve new heights of power or do something new or rallying to meet the villain.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is your constant draw to excitement. You of course, these stuff, put in your natural ups and downs. Your hero can only rise after they get knocked down, but you're putting those in frequently. You're constantly landing on an up, whereas with something like a tragedy or horror, you're usually landing on the down.
Well, I think you mentioned a great one in Dragon Ball. You mean if you turn around, that is a great way that they've done it. Is they're always stressing, always striving to bring to the next level, bring to the next level. I mean, you got to turn around and say, why? How am I watching a series that I've watched the last 30 episodes and it's all been in one fight,
right?
And all this, where somehow they've managed to grab your attention and keep you going, and you're not going, oh, this should have been over like within an hour and been done. It's like they always know how to twist that. So that is another testament to writing on how you can build on, that's their thing. Their theme is, getting more power, boosting, and, showing that, all right, well, the hero got flaws. The hero he almost died. Hold on, he's getting back up. That whole, in prize fighting, while you're watching it, and that Rocky's going to get back up. Last minute he may get taken down, or he may actually lose the fight, but that he's going to pick himself up and go. So the tones that they use, a great writer and great following up by the rest of the crew, is all done by choosing your tone and promoting your tone and keeping that tone. Mm-hmm. Delivering on that is where you hold people's attention. That final thing after round 12, and Rocky finally lands the final blow, and Clubber Lang goes down, or Drago goes down, and you jump up and while you're watching it, that capture is a testament to how it can suck you in. So.
Yeah, and it's almost also like the art direction in the scenes. It's like a weird. This is a weird thing I've noticed. I'll get into the lighting of it all later, but a weird thing I've noticed too is that a lot of heroic things tend to have very smooth people. Very rounded, very smooth. Like Dragon Ball, all the Saiyans and all the Senkai Force, they're all very smooth. Rocky, of course, they built very rounded, very smooth, very muscular. Whereas you look at something like to follow the anime example, something like D. Gray Man or Tokyo Ghoul, where everyone is there's sharp edges and jagged cuts in people, or similar example with boxing, but going to was the movie with Christian Bale and Matt Damon, or not? Mark Wahlberg. Is it The Fighter? Where and also to accept The Machinist, where everyone just looks very malnourished.
Well, The Machinist, I know, is the one where Christian Bale lost a lot of weight. So maybe that one, I'm not sure.
What was it? The Fighter, Christian Bale and Mark Wahlberg. Where Christian Bale, he looks super thin. Mark Wahlberg looks thin, but obviously it has a come around ending, but it is, more darker tone as they're dealing with his brother's destructive behavior, essentially. But both of the leads look much more thin and much more gaunt, as opposed to how Rocky or Apollo Creed looks in their movies, where they're much more full and built out. And maybe that has something to do with the Grecian Adonis complex and the idea of the Adonis hero being full muscled. But
well, going back to shifting back to comics, a good example. Sorry about that. A good example is going back to the Dark Knight Returns. You've got your fight between Superman and Batman, and Superman, he's hasn't aged. He's still a shiny, pretty boy that he is out of the box. And then you've got this broken, older, gruffier, just tainted Bruce Wayne Batman, and they're going through and they're fighting it, and and you hear the animosity with Bruce Wayne, of the fact that Superman is still perfect, he's still the pretty boy, government, whatever. So you've got your plays on that, where you've got your differences that they come across. So that's kind of an example of something that's in the same book, where you've got your plays on different.
And kind of that where I had mentioned earlier, but genre blending is definitely a thing you can do once you understand comedy and tragedy. You can absolutely genre blend to add contrast and add a little bit of shock to each story. I mentioned Invincible earlier about how for a lot of Invincible, it seems like your typical good feeling capes and spandex type thing with, you know, teenage drama, and there are some darker moments here and there, and then you get to the reveal of who Omni-Man really is. And I think it's like the Global Society or whatever that group is, but then just the sheer amounts of gore that gets thrown in. And yeah, and it's a great story, but the contrast there of showing, and they do that to show Mark is having the comedic or the heroic journey, whereas his dad has taken the tragic journey. Both have, you know, made some rough decisions earlier on, and whereas Omni-Man is spiraling down that, eventually leading to his attempt to destroy Earth and humanity, Mark is trying to rally against that and is always trying to rise up every time he gets knocked down, until you get to the fight at the end of that arc. But and they have some fun tone shifts from that point on in the series. But the idea of having characters that have their own tone but running separately but in the same story, and how you can blend those together, and you'll notice, you know, for the most part, you have the art's very bright and uplifting until you get to the moments where it gets darker and more things are revealed, and then you'll get a lot more splashes of a lot more, you know, gore and blood covering the frame to add in a darker tone, or there's a lot more shadowed faces as opposed to not. The fun things that they did with the art there that read Invincible. That's what
yeah. And another series that touches upon that is also the Boys. You know?
Yes.
And you know, Watchmen also, where you know you have the portrayal of, you know, here's the heroes and all this stuff, but these are some seriously messed up people.
Mm-hmm.
So they bring that element in, you know, so that shock value, you know, in the beginning, you know, right off the bat, you start saying, okay, this is going to be another superhero. Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
So that shock value, you know, sets the tone for the rest of the series.
Yeah.
And that's another aspect to do. You know, how do you sell the things? I was at at the Ultraverse 30th panel at San Diego Comic-Con, and they were talking about one of their books, The Exiles, and that was a book that, you know, that the Ultraverse founders had already decided before it was released that pretty much everybody was going to die within the first few issues. So they built up this team and got this this interesting team. And then all of a sudden, they just killed the entire team off. And the only one that didn't die was the undead person.
Of course.
Because he was dead. You know? And stuff like that. So they even went so far as to market it the next couple of issues, proceed to do orders through Diamond distributors and stuff like that, like the series going. And then all of a sudden, they cut it off and then canceled the other issues because they didn't want the spoiler to happen.
Jeez.
But, you know, this is something that, you know, that they wrote in. They were writing a tone of, you know, these are the superheroes. Yeah, you know, things are going. And all of a sudden, everything hits the fan and they're done.
Yeah.
So, good writing there. Good layout work and all that stuff as well.
There's something else I have to mention in terms of blending and almost doing the opposite effect there of where Dexel started on the high and then ended on the low to have a very classic and sudden tragedy. Something with another award-winning Tim Seeley with Hack and Slash, where each graphic novel starts on the low, and it's very much done like a traditional horror story until our heroes get introduced, and then it turns into a dark comedy where there's just like a joke each page. Like things are happening, and there's tons of action and like it's gory, violent action. There's a giant mutant wielding a chainsaw or a spiked bat, but and you know they'll have moments where they get knocked down and have to come back up, but the idea of having what feels like what should be a traditional horror story, but then introducing almost like a more comedic pair, like analog of the Winchester brothers from Supernatural, where they're here to have a good time and kill monsters. They're just joking the entire time. But that blending there and taking the visuals of horror and the tropes of horror, but then using the pacing and the dialogue of comedy, makes for a really interesting experience. It's not everyone's cup of tea, I will say, but I love it. But
it's a very popular series, so
yeah. But finding, you know, you can always find ways to. It's a thing of when you master both. Once you have a working mastery, and like you don't need to be a true master to write anything you want to. You just need to develop a working mastery enough that you can actually create what you want to create. So once you get an idea of like, oh, I want to use this pacing, I want to use this dialogue, and you've practiced it a little bit, you've done a couple drafts, and you're ready to commit to it, then that's kind of your go sign. But it takes a matter of figuring out how to make everything work together. And so once you've done that, you can do some really fun things, blending comedy and tragedy. Kind of thinking on the art side of that, you might I already mentioned Invincible of thing there of mixing the the pastels and the brighter colors with just tremendous body violence. Or something like curse words where you have a talking koala and garden gnomes, but then use some of the most like visually intense and emotionally charged colors possible to make the scene dark. Adventure Time also did a lot of that, thinking back on that.
Yeah, they do a lot of that with the bright colors and stuff, and like I said, the I Hate Fairyland stuff.
Yes, yeah.
it's very dark, but it's very bright. You know?
Yeah.
The thought behind it, and but yeah, that's there's some good contrast that's done on that series, and you know, there's a lot of things out there that, you know, you see a lot of that stuff. You look at, you know, just for example, you know, the character, you know, the Joker.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you've got somebody that's just, you know, he wants to be a comedian.
Yeah.
And he's so bad at it that he's funny. But because he's not he never was succeeded, I guess. It's hard to tell because, you know, they're always constantly rewriting, you know,
right,
who he is, you know, and all that stuff. But, you know, then you've got he's never happy, so, and he's mentally disturbed, so he's extremely dark. So you've got the dark driving a lot of the comedy and all this stuff. So you've got a lot of those characters that are out there that, you know, you've got ones that are trying to be funny but are super dark, and then you have, like you mentioned, you know, Hack/Slash, where you expect them to be dark, but they're comedic, you know.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the other way around. So it's a good mix on that. So
absolutely. We are coming up to our end here, so I'll take this moment here to promote our Kickstarter.
See if we're still at 54 backers, or if we
come
up from there. And by the way, hello, Pops. Madness Comic Network. Pops Venza. Awesome.
And we're still at 54 backers at roughly over halfway there. So if you get a chance after the stream, please, or if you're watching the VOD sometime this week or next, go ahead over to Kickstarter. Just type in Silverline, Kalis, Cat and Mouse, any one of those things, you'll find us. I'll also throw a link in the comments here on every station that we're live at. Go ahead, back that Kickstarter. You won't regret it because these are some quality books. And
just I believe just today, Roland added the T-shirts and stuff in, so it's constantly expanding.
We do get T-shirts, and if you wanted to get something else, I'm not wearing my Wolf Hunter shirt, and I probably should have, but I do have the Wolf Hunter shirt, and it looks great. And if you want to get some original art, you can also get that added on, or go ahead, add any one of our back issues onto your order, get prepared for stuff that's coming out. Wolf Hunter issue number 1, number 2 is coming out, or should be getting announced here soon. Sniper and Rook, of course, anything like that, obsoletes. Go ahead and get yourself some dope comics. Get yourself a cool foil cover colored by David here. You already showed it off earlier, but it looks great. And, you know, how often do you get a foil cover anymore? Yeah.
Some good options there. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I know they're working on it. Kablam's always come through with it, so we have every bit of faith that they will come up with something nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. I can't think of anything I would do for Wolf Hunter number 2. Maybe if you get like some like old fighter jet wing fabric, like the top lining. See if we can print on that. Yeah, but we'll be back next week. I don't have a subject written down yet, so I have to come up with some subjects for the following month. But before we go, David, do you have any closing thoughts or notes on setting tone?
No, I think we pretty much covered most of it. Probably a few times for the same thing, but no, it's great stuff, and you know, it takes a collaborative team to come up with it, you know, and implement it. So some great stuff, great opportunities there. So
absolutely. My thoughts are the same there. You know, if you normally work in one media, feel free to, you know, do some experience in the other one, because unlike TV and film, where usually as a writer or director you usually get typeset as you only write tragedy, you only write comedy, you only direct this or that, unless you're a Jordan Peele. In comics, it's much more loose. As long as you created a book at some point, usually someone will get you to do something. You know, obviously subject matter. You know, if you normally draw aliens, unless you have examples of you drawing not aliens, you're going more often than not get alien books. But experiment, play around, build a portfolio that includes a bunch of different stuff. That way, because, you know, the comics, the limitations are mostly self-made, so feel free to do whatever you want to.
Just we talked about it before, but you know, do a lot of variations. So, you know, a couple of splash pages are nice to have in the portfolio, but also concentrate on some, you know, standard storyboard pages, you know, a series of pages, you know, whether it's writing or art or anything, you know, kind of go in that route. For artists, you know, like one of the things he tells you, if your thing is drawing aliens or drawing robots, you know, that's great. If you're going to be in one of the limited, you know, alien or robot category and kind of get typeset in that, or typecast, or how it relates to comics.
Yeah.
But throw your stuff out there. Work on just regular people.
Yeah.
People, different situations. Incorporate things like maybe some some more detail in backgrounds, animal, just kind of as wide of a variety as you have that you can put in makes it more of an option that maybe the editor or somebody that's seeing your work may go, that looks like something that I can use. I've been thinking, I've had this idea, that you may be the right person for that. So as broad of a portfolio as you have, whether it's art or or writing, the wider your range, the more opportunities that you have. So just keep that in mind and just keep changing it up. Take what you have as a comfort zone and jump out of that and try something different.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario, it doesn't work out for you. You don't like what you did. Maybe you file that away. Maybe try it later, or whatever. But at least you can say, hey, I tried that. It worked for me, or it didn't work for me. And you have more stuff to show. So
absolutely. And on the writer side, I'd say bare minimum, create 3 full scripts. Do one that's funny, one that's scary, and one that is sort of your take on the traditional Cape Crusader idea. What your take on a superhero, and pitch them around to artists looking to collaborate, or any companies or contests that are accepting open scripts, or in some cases agents, because sometimes you have to get an agent to work with some publishers now, so which is weird, but I imagine that it won't be too long before most of the big name comic publishers work with the agent system, because if you're a writer, you're usually going to end up working with an agent at some point anyway. And it just makes sense to have someone help you with your contracts now. But yeah, create something that you feel explores each genre, and then from that point start combining, but fully explore each idea first, and see what happens, and then keep on creating new iterations. But yeah, like I said, we'll be back next week. We don't have a subject yet, but until we do,
the Wampa says,
very cool. Make mine
silver line.
That's the wrong one.
My name is Ross Ritchie from Boom Studios, and make mine Silverline.